It's a very quiet evening in London. Just sat outside my front door. It's nice when it feels like there's a bit of a lull in the activities. That everyone's sort of taking a bit of time off. Rising in the background, as well as that moped, is a recording from Berlin, also at night. So hopefully you're in two places at the same time, united by the night time. That's the voice of Phil Smith singing. He's coming home from a late night gig with his accordion, enjoying an ad hoc al fresco performance. He saw a rainstorm creeping towards him, approaching and then enveloping the music around him. This is Shortcuts. Brief encounters, true stories, radio adventures, and found sound. Today, Silent Night.
At night in prison, the sound stops being so much from the wing and starts being more from the outside world.
I crossed half a world. I risked being eaten by hyenas to have a recording I can find on any sound library that I already have.
Whether it's cars beeping or a high-speed train, I think that outside sounds, they're comforting.
If you listen carefully, what you can hear in the background is the boiler firing up and the heating going on in my house. There's an atmospheric shift, which I think is a sound shift as well, which happens when everyone else in the house that you're in has fallen asleep. You can even feel it when somebody's lying next to you. It's a change in the quality of their breathing and the sounds of their breath. You just know that they're no longer in the room with you, their head is somewhere else, they've checked out. And it's really interesting because even though you can hear the other people around you, those sounds really tell you that you're alone.
Every Saturday morning, Jochen Rice is to be found at his local flea market in Hamburg, looking through boxes of old photos.
I'm collecting photographs since 25 years.
Minutes, hours, days spent leafing through the lives of strangers.
When you found photos, private amateur photos on a flea market, you know there's no one of this family interested any longer.
Jochen takes home the images he likes and organises them into themes.
They are sitting on the toilet and one is reading a book. This is what we call nowadays yoga. The German word is Kerze, candle.
How did you start to categorise things?
At the beginning I'm collecting Menschen in ungewöhnlichen Situationen. That means people in unusual situations.
Amongst categories like still life, double exposures, football, moments.
No portraits.
Is
no classical portraits.
Women in trees.
Women in trees are unusual situations. When I discover the first woman on tree, I think, oh, it's funny, I will take it with me. But after some years, more and more, and now it's a collection.
How many photos?
maybe 110.
And what kind of eras and...
From the 1920s to the 1950s. This category shows the beginning of the amateur photography when the camera was in the hand of men, and they don't like to give it up. Sometimes there are more than one woman on tree. I don't know anything about these women and these trees, but they all look in a way happy. I know that when my parents got to know each other, it was in the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s. They met each other at my grandparents in the kitchen, or they are not alone at the first meetings. And the next step was to make a walk together. And for me, sometimes the women in trees are love situations, butterflies in the stomach, to make some nonsense. This is one way of interpretation, and maybe it's true, maybe for some pictures, but I don't know.
I think it's really nice because when you're in love, then you, at least what I know of it, you feel a bit like a child in some ways. And when you're a child, you climb trees.
And you run as an adult, you climb at trees as an adult when you feel in love.
Being but men, we walked into the trees, afraid, letting our syllables be soft, for fear of waking the rooks, for fear of coming noiselessly into a world of wings and cries. If we were children, we might climb, catch the rooks sleeping and break no twig, and, after the soft ascent, thrust out our heads above the branches to wonder at the unfailing stars. Out of confusion, as the way is, and the wonder that man knows, out of the chaos would come bliss. That, then, is loveliness, we said. Children in wonder, watching the stars, is the aim and the end. Being but men, we walked into the trees.
Maybe this is the approach for the other bough over there. It's a kind of monkey.
I'm not sure we've got the right technique with the legs there.
No. It feels very secure.
You look like a pretzel. There's a photo of us when we were new, up a lemon tree, the oldest tree on the island. I don't know how we got up there, but the gardener came over to tell us off. When was the last time you climbed a tree?
With you in Havard, a lemon tree.
Lemon tree, yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time you climbed a tree?
I think it was the same one. We were dipping ants in ink and watching them run around on the marble, and everything they wrote was true. 2 years ago, when we were off the ground.
You want it to be like swinging over a river, right?
Yeah, rather than a bin.
And some kind of like questionable characters who are like hanging out in the middle of this park.
Setting off firecrackers. Now comes the next part. It's on us to head out into the woods and mean to climb.
Sometimes I would like to see what happens after this moment.
I remember once I took a dance class. I think it was a swing class or a jive class or something like that. And what happened was each of the women danced with each of the men for a few steps at a time. So you ended up dancing with everyone. And the sheer range of dynamics was unbelievable. From literally bashing heads with people to awkwardly, stiltedly trying to pair up to dancing with instant, electrifying chemistry. Conversation can be like a dance, trying to find a rhythm with someone without standing on their feet, and in the same way, a connection can come out of the blue. The thrill of having a big, deep conversation with someone when it's not expected can be life-changing. And when you first step up to dance with someone, when you first meet someone, you have no idea what that connection will be.
Imagine you're on holiday, Slovenia, let's say, alone in a river, bobbing up and down in quiet pools of thought. Dreamy stuff.
I swim, plavam.
Okay, now you're with a group of people. All these nice new friends you've just met. Probably stay in the same hotel. One of them actually grew up in Staffordshire as well. Nice meeting them. Anyway, there you all are, splashing about, carefree.
We swim, plavamo.
Now, there's just two of you.
We two swim, plavava.
Suddenly conversation is very noticeable. It flows or it dries up. Either way, you become very aware that you're wearing a pair of trunks.
Lepo je, da se lahko pogovarjava o slovenskem jeziku. It's nice that we can talk about the Slovenian language.
There's something unique to that moment when you're alone with another person for the first time, whoever it is.
He is alone, sam je.
A kind of intimacy that most languages allow simply to float by, like a big old log.
We, both of us, are alone, sama sva.
Slovenian doesn't. It is, according to my guidebook, one of the few languages in the world with a dual form.
When two people tell something about themselves, they have to use the dual in Slovenian.
Between the I singular and the we plural, there's an us too. I like the idea of a language which recognises the uniqueness of pairing up. Maybe two Slovenians, strangers, meeting, have never known an awkward silence because they're always sharing the same grammatical air. We two, dual form, are making awkward silence together, they both think and smile. And perhaps the vicar at altars across the country says, "Do you two," in dual form, "take you two," also in dual form, "to take each other to be each other's lawfully wedded partners?" And they say, in turn, "We two do."
We two swim, plavava.
Swimming our way, a Slovenian linguist.
My name is Boštjan Dvořák.
Surely a great master of the dual form.
I'm born on the Slovenian Adriatic coast.
I asked him if we could meet for a conversation about conversation.
Every language has a certain possibility or possibilities that other languages don't have.
As a radio producer, I'm often thinking about the art of good conversation.
Maybe I should speak a little bit louder.
The back and forth,
Okay,
the ebb and flow.
You can adjust the techniques, that's nice.
Listening.
Professional.
Understanding. And then I tend just to completely ignore that and think about what I'm here to get.
A conversation between two people is always very interesting and...
In fact, I never actually get in the water.
Inspiring.
I'm on the bank with a rod.
For example, riba is a fish.
Reeling in the tape.
Ribi, two fish.
Press record.
And ribe,
catch the...
3 or more fish.
Audio trout.
Being linguist does not prohibit me from breeding butterflies and making some research.
I just need a pithy one-liner about living in the dual
Can
form.
you give me the Slovenian sentence?
Which he's probably saying about now.
We think butterflies are very weak.
And head back to the hotel.
And they cannot straightly fly.
Get a beer.
And this is true, of course.
They have good beer here. It's kind of like Czech beer.
But for some reasons, they would be caught by a bird. Therefore, they have to have this zigzag. In nature, it's dangerous to go straightly.
I've no idea where we are.
Is the word for butterfly related to the word for caterpillar?
Is that me asking a question?
Not really. Maybe in some languages. I think it's very seldom and improbable that a person or a people would have the time and the interest to follow the development of a caterpillar until the emergence of the butterfly.
Do you keep caterpillars?
Yes. I used to breed thousands of caterpillars for some experiments.
How long does it take for a butterfly?
It differs. So it depends on the species maybe 8 days, for example, with the European swallowtail.
I'm in the water.
Or many years in the earth or in a cocoon.
And what is it about caterpillars and moths that you like so much? It's quite nice.
Well, I started when I was a little boy. I got a present for my birthday, The Wonderful World of Animals, a book. There I saw a picture of a caterpillar.
We're off script. Into uncharted anecdote.
I like traveling, making some research.
Into a valley.
Languages and insects. I took some days to wander around through the landscape. I even got lost. There were 2 ways. I climbed and climbed higher and higher, and then I got lost in the woods. I climbed and climbed, and it was very interesting because I found the caterpillars. I found the caterpillar I looked for. There is a species of moth whose caterpillar isn't yet known. And I think I found this caterpillar the time I was lost. It was such a nice caterpillar, yellow and green with blue pinkish stripes and a big horn on the end.
I'm thinking of a little metaphor in my head. It's a fable.
Yes.
2 people walk together to the mountain, and sometimes they take the wrong directions,
yes,
and sometimes they take the right path. But what's amazing is sometimes they just find the caterpillar of conversation.
Yes, yeah. And of course they say, Srečala sva gusenico. We met each other with the caterpillar. We have found the dual form.
Welcome to the podcast of Shortcuts. I'm Josie Long, and today has been recorded in a very method way. The episode is called Into the Woods. We've been walking into the woods in a nature reserve in Hackney. I mean, it's not completely hidden from the rest of society. We've seen a number of people walking and running with their dogs. We've been attacked by robins, and now we're by a power plant. So it's not, you know, I'm not saying we're castaways, but we've really gone to great effort here, so I hope you enjoy it. What is that? Above us is a green parakeet. This is Shortcuts. The story that I've heard is that a very wealthy person in Hampstead had their own collection of parakeets. They got loose, and then there was a fleet, I assume that's the correct term, there was a fleet of parakeets in Hampstead, but then some of them relocated because everyone in London seems to be like, no, there's the Lewisham parakeets. So I think they're just quite successful birds. Brief encounters, true stories, radio adventures, and found sound. It's the first bright day of spring. We are in a nature reserve in East London in Hackney. Today, Into the Woods. It's a little piece of woods and nature, slap bang in the middle of the city. So I've read a little bit about forest bathing and about how there are studies that show that when you're surrounded by trees and sort of the greens and browns of nature, what your brain does is brings you into the parasympathetic nervous system. I think that's the right one. Basically the one that blisses you out a little bit. So you immediately feel more relaxed, loving, gentle and thoughtful. And conversely, when you are surrounded by grey and concrete and in a built-up, hard, unnatural area, it engages your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight or flee or freeze, all of the ones beginning with F. And so it's genuinely, almost immediately positive for your body and your brain to be in the woods. So forest bathing is people going in and reaping the benefits of that kind of old-fashioned natural environment. As I'm saying this, there's a plane flying very low overhead, so we really are getting the best of both worlds.
It all goes silent quite quickly, and the sound stops being so much from the wing, and potentially, depending on where your prison is located, starts being more from the outside world. I think that outside sounds, they're comforting. Anything from the outside world that passes over the fence, whether it's cars beeping or a high-speed train, I think that it can have the dual effect of making you feel kind of reticent and sad that you're inside, but also comforting. I do remember waking up at 4 a.m. in prison, and it was so absolutely quiet. It was ceramic. The nothingness rebounds in a weird way off of those bald walls. You're not tired because you haven't really been doing much if you haven't been to the gym. There's not much to put your mind to. There's not much texture, and you don't realise what it's like to do that night upon night upon night upon night. And I mean, I did it for a year, but some people do it for 20. In the morning, the prison officers will walk down the wing and you hear the sound of the keys coming towards you. You can hear the first cells getting unlocked, so the next cell is and then you're like, is it me next? And no, there's another one. You hear the key enter your door and you're out. And immediately, straight off the bat, people are playing pop, Heart FM, grime, some drum and bass going on. It's probably me with my old hip-hop tape or whatever, 7:30 in the morning. I gotta say, most people can't handle that level of noise. I think that my prison experience probably made my hunger for chaotic sounds more extreme. While I sleep, I often use these 8-hour YouTube videos of fires crackling or soothing water. The one I like the most is the tropical storms. It's got the tin roof buckling and the palm trees falling to the ground, and the texture, that kind of background noise helps me to be... I think it helps my sleep patterns.
The voice of former prisoner Carl Catamar, and that was produced by Tom Glasser. Tom and Carl have just made a documentary together featured on National Prison Radio called Sound Inside. As part of it, they spent a night in a notoriously loud wing, and despite all of the sound, Carl was straight out to sleep like a light, but Tom spent the whole night awake, racked with anxiety. House with the only people here, just me and the producer, and I'd really thought it would have a kind of monastic, enveloping, silent quality to it. It would be almost haunting and enigmatic, and yet what you can actually hear is the sound of the radiator filling up with water and the fridge going in the background and the boiler coming on every now and again. And the fleeting sounds of my upstairs neighbours listening to the Champions League football match. And what it's really hit home to me is that there is no such thing as a perfect silence. Unfortunately, in our next story, the Italian producer Jonathan Zenti comes to the exact same conclusion, but he has to travel halfway across the world in order to do so.
There's a folder on my external backup hard drive with all my favorite recordings I never used. It's a bit weird to keep useless recordings, but I like to go back to them once in a while. They remind me of those pretentious moments in my life when I feel I'm doing something special. Like this file that drives my memory to that time I thought I was going to record the perfect silence. The file's name is Crickets, Night, Masai Mara. I'm in Kenya in 2015. I've been here for a couple of weeks now to make some interviews about women's health. I told the NGO that has sent me here that to be effective we need to go to remote areas as far as possible from Nairobi to collect real stories from real people of the countryside. That's how I tricked them into a kind of paid safari. Tonight, me and my guide Bernard are going to sleep at the guest house of a tiny Masai Christian community on the border that divides Kenya and Tanzania, not far from the Serengeti Park. Around the compound, there's nothing, just a hazel, warm savanna. Reaching this piece of land after 12 hours of rough road, I realized there's no way I'll find myself again in a place like this. As long as I am here, I want to collect every sound I can. My hunting for a special sound starts staring with a giant microphone in my hands in front of these singers who play for me an hypnotic, undeserved Masai song. I record every sonority of a restoring welcome tea. Are you having fun of me?
I'm already teaching you, I'm already teaching you what we do. We are now collecting sound effects. So when you listen to your radio, you think it is real. But it was just done like this and put it.
It's 10 p.m. Everything is quiet and it's time to go to sleep. I stop by the kitchen to record all the small sounds, the windows, the sink. And then the young housekeeper asks me to go to bed.
We take the tea and then we go?
Yeah. He tells me he has to be the last one around and I shouldn't stray outside the room before the sun rises because during the night many animals come around in search for food, especially hyenas. But I'm not ready to call it a day yet. I still miss that special, unique sound that I'm looking for. So I wait, and when I don't see anyone around, I cover myself with mosquitoes repellent, I turn on the recorder, and I sneak out. But the housekeeper sees my torchlight, and he tells me to go back into the room for my safety.
Yeah, turn it off.
What's up? Yeah.
I got...
And then I sneak out again without the light. I sit on a small step in a deep, deep dark. And when I focus myself on what is coming out from my earphones, I realize that what I'm hearing is not silence. Actually, I'm recording crickets. Compared to the sound of the everyday life I'm used to, this noise is quiet. But this is not the perfect silence I wanted to catch. I crossed half a word, I risked being eaten by hyenas to have a recording I can find on any sound library that I already have. I could record a better silence in any church back home. I better turn the recorder off and go back to my room. I have another pretentious moment to add to my useless recording folder on my backup hard drive. It's not the perfect silence I was looking for, but it's a kind of silence I started missing as soon as I got back to the hustle and bustle of the city. I didn't change the history of sound, but I'm happy to have this shelter of quietness where I can hide myself once in a while. This file that I called Crickets Night Masai Mara.
So we just moved into the other room in the flat in the hope that we create a kind of perfect monastic ambience. But unfortunately, whilst we've lost the boiler in the fridge, we've gained the upstairs neighbours listening quite prominently to the football and occasionally expressing strident opinions and stamping around. What I found quite funny about Jonathan's piece is that he had this idealised image that by going into a very stripped back, very natural place, there'd be no sound. And forgetting that, of course, the chaos of nature is always there. It's like the idea that if you go out into the middle of nowhere, you'll be in this perfect pitch dark night. And actually, what you find is you see more stars than you've ever seen in your life. You've got a canopy of bright stars, or the bright moon illuminating the night. So you're lit up far more than if you were on a suburban street with one little broken street lamp. Our last story features the voice of Jordan Scott, who's a poet who also has a stutter. He was researching a connection that he'd observed in his own life, which is the more that he stutters, the more people in power assume that he's lying. His research brought him to studying interrogation transcripts from Guantanamo Bay, in which interrogators also interpreted detainees' stutters as signs of their dishonesty. Jordan decided to apply to tour the prison so he could speak to interrogators and linguists who were working there and learn more. But he knew that it was very difficult to be allowed on one of these tours, so in order to appear less threatening, he applied for the visit as a poet. Guantanamo officials said that Jordan wouldn't be able to speak to any interrogators or linguists. He wouldn't be able to record unauthorised human voices. So Jordan had to change tactic very quickly. He asked if he could record the ambient noises around him. When he arrived, the shorthand explanation of what he was doing became that he was recording ambient sound for poetry, even though in reality he wasn't sure what use he would find for the recordings while he was taking them. This recording starts in a part of Guantanamo called Camp X-Ray. Camp X-Ray now stands abandoned and overgrown with nature because it's the site of an active war crimes investigation into the torture that happened there. That was made for us by Jess Shane, and it featured the voice of Jordan Scott. You can exist in a place that you convince yourself is silent, but it takes somebody else to hear the truth of everything that's around you. Thank you so much for listening to Shortcuts. If you enjoyed the show, you can find many more programmes to listen to and download at bbc.co.uk/Radio 4. Now I am going to go to sleep. Good night.